The city that disappeared overnight. They said the city never existed, that it was a myth built on wind and whispers, but the desert had other ideas. Beneath the scorched dunes of what is now known as the Dasht-e-Kavir, deep in the heart of Iran, there was once a city so advanced, so strange, and so quickly erased from memory that even time itself seemed to flinch when it vanished. No map dared mark it, no historian confirmed it. And yet, for generations, shepherds spoke of strange stone shapes rising from the sand, only to disappear by morning. It began with a tremor, not in the earth, but in the air. In the fall of 1899, a group of Russian cartographers on assignment to map Persia's uncharted territories reported an anomaly, a compass that spun wildly at a specific point in the desert, even as the stars above remained fixed. Thinking it magnetic interference, they moved on. But one of them, Alexei Chernov, couldn't forget it. Years later, he would return alone. Chernov's journal, found buried in an Armenian monastery decades later, told a story no one believed. He wrote of waking in the night to the sound of voices, not near, but beneath. Chanting in no language he recognized. He described ruins that seemed ancient but glowed faintly, like moonlight trapped in stone. And then the city appeared. Just for a moment, towers of an impossible geometry, arches that shimmered like heat mirages, streets that curved where they should have ended, and people, figures, moving without sound, their eyes reflecting stars that hadn't yet formed in the sky. He tried to sketch it, failed. The pages grew erratic. By the time the journal reached its final entry, Chernov had stopped writing in Russian. He had begun writing in a script that didn't exist. Scholars dismissed it. A desert hallucination. A case of sunstroke and madness. But in 1932, a French expedition led by archaeologist Camille Dupont reported the same compass phenomenon. And more, seismic readings that suggested a void beneath the earth. Not a cave, a structure. Something built, something massive. But the desert swallowed the report. The team vanished. No bodies, no equipment, just their last transmission. The city is waking. Over the next century, the legend became a curse. Planes flying over the coordinates reported mechanical failures. Satellites showed brief shadows where there should be none. A U.S. drone in 2008 recorded 7 seconds of footage showing what appeared to be a ziggurat rising from the sand, then static. And then came the storm. In 2019, a rare sandstorm swept across the Kavir like a tsunami of dust. When it cleared, a group of nomads stumbled across something impossible, an entrance. Just a crack in the ground, but lined with carved stone steps, ancient, intact, leading downward. Only one of them descended. His name was Rafi, a trader's son, barely 20, with more curiosity than caution. He carried a flashlight, a journal, and the arrogance of youth. When he didn't return, they assumed the worst. But 3 days later, he walked out, silent, changed. He no longer spoke the same dialect. He no longer blinked in the sun. His eyes, they said, looked older, not tired, just older. And then he vanished. Not walked away, vanished. And so the whispers returned, only now they were louder, stronger, louder than the sand, louder than denial. Because somewhere beneath the surface, the city was not just waiting, it was watching. They called it the Al-Khat al-Munharif, the tilted line. Not a place, not a structure, but a threshold. Scholars of ancient Sumer had mentioned it in passing as metaphor, a symbol of time's rebellion. But to those who knew the signs, the symbols etched into forgotten ruins from Mesopotamia to Mongolia, it meant something more literal. A crossing, a wrinkle, a place where time itself was not a line, but a spiral. And now, after centuries of silence, that wrinkle had opened again. The coordinates matched the anomaly the Russian cartographers had once mapped. But when a private expedition team sponsored by a German tech conglomerate arrived in 2021, their instruments behaved like toys in a magnetic storm. GPS went blind, clocks lagged and then sped up. Even voice recordings distorted into echoes before a word was finished. But the descent had already begun. This team, unlike the others, came prepared. Drones, light rigs, AI scanners. But even their best machines trembled before what they found. The staircase went down, far deeper than any believed possible. Each step felt newer than the last, as if time flowed backward. Moss grew upward. Fossils appeared unweathered. At 300 feet below surface, the air turned warm, then cold, then silent. Not quiet, silent. No echo, no sound, like something was absorbing it all. And then, the door. It wasn't made of wood or iron or stone. It was a shimmer, a translucent membrane that hummed at a frequency no one could hear, but everyone felt. Behind it, darkness pulsed like a heartbeat. They sent in a drone. What came back was not footage. It was memory, images that weren't recorded but remembered by the machine. Impossible, synthetic visions of a city alive and thriving. Gold towers bending light, water flowing upward, people speaking in chords instead of words, and a sky with no sun, only stars. 3 of the team touched the door. 2 passed out, 1 disappeared. Her name was Lena Mertz, a linguist with a focus on proto-civilizations. Her handprint remained glowing on the shimmer for 13 hours. When the others fled back to the surface, they found the world slightly off. Time had passed. Not days, not years, centuries. Or so it felt, because everything they knew had moved ahead. Their satellite phones no longer connected. Their maps had different names. The stars had shifted. And in the horizon behind them, the desert was gone, replaced by a vast black forest. And yet, when they blinked, it was back. The sand. The silence, the sun. It had taken something from them, or shown them something that couldn't be seen, only remembered. Because the city that disappeared overnight hadn't vanished into time. It had pulled time into itself, and those who found it didn't just risk death. They risked never being sure what year they were standing in. And it was only the beginning. They say every city has a builder. But who builds a city no one remembers? Who lays stone in a place no one can find? As the years went on and the myths deepened, one name began to emerge again and again, in scrolls buried in Moroccan tombs, in temple fragments uncovered in Turkmenistan, in coded phrases within Sanskrit hymns. One name, not spoken, not written plainly, just suggested: the architect. He was never described. No age, no origin, just referred to as the one who measured with stars and dreamed in geometry. Some believed he was not a man at all, but a thought, an idea left behind by a civilization so old it had given up names. Others believed he was very real and still alive, or if not alive, preserved, guarded, encased in the same time-bending field that swallowed his city. In 2023, a rogue team of explorers calling themselves the Recall Collective reached what they believed was the central chamber beneath the shimmer. They weren't scientists. They were a mix of ex-military, ancient tech enthusiasts, and 2 former CERN researchers who had been dismissed for pursuing what the Institute called speculative anomalies. They found what they called the Eye. It wasn't a machine, it wasn't stone. It was something in between. An orb set in a basin of unknown metal, surrounded by carvings that changed shape when not observed directly. Every time they filmed it, the footage came back different. On one viewing, a staircase spiraling down from a non-existent ceiling. On another, a face. Not human, just a face watching back. When they activated the Eye, by accident, according to their only surviving member, something woke up. Not a person, not a beast, a memory. The chamber vibrated with a frequency that cracked bones and melted watches. And for 1 second, just one, every member of the team saw the city, not as ruins, not as shadows, alive. They were standing in a plaza surrounded by towers that sang. Streets shifted under their feet, not with motion but with purpose. And at the center, where the eye had been, stood a figure. Whether it was the architect, they couldn't say, but it saw them, it acknowledged them, and then it erased them. Only one returned. He spoke in riddles, drawing symbols on walls before collapsing into sleep that lasted weeks. He claimed they had seen the city in its moment of creation and its fall at once, that it wasn't destroyed, it was paused. Paused by the architect himself, not out of fear, but out of mercy, because what he built wasn't a city, it was a warning. To the future, to us. And we had just knocked on its door. Before it was hidden beneath the sand, before it bent time into spirals and vanished from the maps of empires, the city had a name, not one that could be spoken aloud, but one that was sung, a vibration that resonated deep in the bones. The last who knew its melody died out millennia ago, but echoes remained, in lullabies whispered by mountain tribes, in the rhythmic hums of nomadic prayers, in the quiet spaces between lightning and thunder. Somewhere the memory of that name still lingered, not in words but in places, ancient places, unmarked temples in the Andes, labyrinths beneath Turkish salt mines, frescoes in forgotten shrines in the jungles of Laos. They all held fragments, glyphs, patterns, tones. And when pieced together, they hummed. The hum wasn't just sound, it was a signal, one that awakened memories not of this world, but of another time. Time didn't just move differently within the city, it obeyed different laws. Linear cause and effect dissolved. What happened once could happen again or had never stopped happening. This city, if that word still fit, was a recursion, a loop, a test. People who'd encountered it didn't return insane. They returned wrong, temporally unmoored. One spoke to reflections that answered back differently. Another aged in reverse, physically regressing to a child as their mind grew old. One woman, a Canadian astrophysicist, was found in Iceland speaking fluently in a language no living human knew, but her voice came out in 2 tones at once, overlapping like broken audio. These weren't side effects, they were warnings. And then came the night the stars blinked. Satellites went offline. Telescopes from 5 continents reported the same anomaly. For 43 seconds, a patch of sky near the constellation Scorpius turned black. Not clouded, not dimmed. Gone. It was as if something had risen up to block not just the view, but the time. In that same moment, every known survivor who had touched the city's shimmered threshold collapsed. Whether in hospitals, homes, or hiding, they all spoke a name. One word, different sounds, same shape. Transcribed phonetically in over 17 languages, it always came back to the same root. The city was waking again, and this time it remembered us. Not as visitors, but as descendants. It wasn't supposed to be real. That's what every expert said when the reports started to multiply. The shimmering door seen in an ancient forest in Argentina. The identical ruins discovered under a melting glacier in Greenland. A boy in a hospital in Cairo, drawing the same impossible city in crayon without ever being shown a photo. The map was rebuilding itself, but not on paper, inside people's minds. And the architect had returned. Not as a figure of stone or memory, but in motion, in signal, in chaos. Every major observatory began to report inconsistencies in star movements, not delays, jumps, like the sky was skipping ahead, like something had reprogrammed time itself. The Recall Collective, what remained of it, broadcast a final message from an untraceable frequency. The words were simple. The city was not meant to last. It was meant to warn. We broke the loop, and now it's rewriting us. Governments denied it. Nations scrambled to explain, but there were too many coincidences. Entire towns losing a day, animals migrating before seasons changed, children speaking in extinct tongues during sleep. Something was leaking through. And deep beneath the Dashte Kavir, the city pulsed. It didn't need to rise again. It was already everywhere, in code, in dreams, in the folds of memory. They say the boy who vanished, the trader's son, was seen again, not in the desert, but in a crowd in New York, in a village in Bhutan, on a security cam in Lagos. Same face, same eyes, never aged, always silent, watching. Because the city did not disappear, it moved. It is no longer a place you find. It is a place that finds you. And if you feel like something's not quite right, if time feels off, if memory repeats, if your shadow lingers longer than it should, you might already be inside it. So ask yourself this. What do you remember from yesterday? And are you sure it happened? Uncle Luke tells like, comment, subscribe, before the city erases that too.